You ever have one of those mornings where everything feels like it's clicking into place? Like this is it, this is the day things really take off? That was me, walking into the office, absolutely buzzing. I had no idea that buzz was about to turn into a free fall. A drop so sudden it would change everything. But sometimes the lowest points are where you find out what you're really made of. I can still remember the smell of fresh coffee and expensive cologne in that conference room. It was one of those perfect mornings, you know? The light was bouncing off the huge glass table where I'd just placed the contract. $60 million. I'd spent 18 long months chasing that deal, pouring everything I had into it. My heart was just racing with pride. This was my moment, the culmination of so much work. Then Richard Sterling, our CEO, walked in. He always looked immaculate, perfect silver hair, custom suit, the whole 9 yards. Trailing behind him was Brooke Ramsey, my VP. And honestly, Brooke had barely lifted a finger on this deal. As soon as I saw their faces, something felt off. They weren't celebratory, not at all. They looked stiff. "Ava," Richard said, and he didn't even glance at the contract I'd laid out. "We need to discuss restructuring." The air in the room just went still. I could feel my smile freeze right on my face. "We're taking the company in a different direction," he continued, and then he slid this folder across the table toward me. My eyes locked onto it. Termination papers. My hand, the one that had just placed that $60 million contract, suddenly felt ice cold. 18 months of work, countless late nights, all those sacrifices, and I was being fired. Minutes, literally minutes. After delivering the biggest contract in Summit Stone Corp's history. "Brooke will be taking over the Oracore Systems account," Richard added, his voice flat. "She has the executive presence we need for clients at this level." I looked up and there was Brooke with this smug little smile playing on her lips. And in that instant, a strange kind of calmness washed over me. They had absolutely no idea what they'd just done. I picked up the pen, signed the papers, and closed the folder. Then I looked up at them and I smiled. Just 2 weeks before all this, I was sitting across from Priya Sharma, the CEO of Oracore. Her office was super minimalist, all clean lines and quiet focus. Rain was tapping against these massive floor-to-ceiling windows as we hammered out the final terms of the deal. Priya wasn't your typical CEO. No fancy power suits or corporate games, just brilliant ideas and a kind of brutal honesty that I actually really respected. "Ava, we're ready to sign," she said, leaning forward. "But I need to know you'll be handling this personally. Not some random account manager they'll assign later." I nodded. "Of course I'll." "No," she interrupted, and her eyes were intense. "I need more than corporate promises, Ava. This is a $60 million gamble for us. I'm not signing unless you personally guarantee you'll oversee the entire implementation." I hesitated for a beat. That wasn't really how Summit Stone operated. Deals were closed by sales, then handed off to an implementation team. But Priya, she wasn't budging. I could see it in her eyes. "I promise," I finally said, meeting her gaze. "I will personally manage this transition. You have my word." Priya studied me for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "Good. I trust you, Ava. Not your company necessarily. You." We shook hands on it. And I never mentioned that specific condition to anyone back at Summit Stone. It wasn't part of the official written contract, just a personal promise between Priya and me. Something in my gut told me to keep it quiet. That handshake, that promise, that was my insurance policy, though I didn't have a clue at the time just how critical it would become. My office door was still just a tiny bit open when I overheard it. This was about 3 days before the official signing, before that awful meeting. Brooke's voice, clear as day, drifted from Richard Sterling's corner office. "She just doesn't have the background for this level of responsibility," Brooke was saying. I recognized that superior tone of hers. The Oracore executives, they all went to top schools. How is Ava going to relate to them with her state college degree? My blood ran cold. Just froze. I'd worked twice as hard as anyone, especially people like Brooke, to get half as far. While she was busy flaunting her Harvard MBA, I'd been out there in the trenches actually closing deals. I never cared where anyone went to school, only what they could do. The board's concerned too, Richard replied, his voice lower, more conspiratorial. This is our biggest account yet. We need someone with the right pedigree. I can step in, Brooke offered, her voice smooth as silk. I speak their language. Besides, we're bringing in a new head of sales anyway, aren't we? And just like that, all the pieces clicked into place. It was like a punch to the gut. They'd been planning to replace me all along. The deal I'd poured my heart and soul into for over a year. It was just a stepping stone for Brooke. My success, my biggest achievement, was going to be the perfect excuse for my own execution. I backed away from the door silently, my hands shaking with a rage I'd never felt before. My degree wasn't fancy enough. 18 months of relentless work, of exceeding every target, meant absolutely nothing because I didn't belong to their elite little club. I'd never felt so furious, or so utterly determined in my entire life. Back in my apartment that evening after Richard and Brooke had so coldly dismissed me, the first thing I did was delete Summit Stone's number from my phone. My potted plants needed watering. My cat Leo needed feeding. Life, it just goes on even when your career has just imploded right in front of your eyes. I microwaved some leftover pasta and sat cross-legged on my couch, still in my expensive work clothes. The termination package was generous, I'll give them that. 6 months' salary, basically hush money to keep me quiet. They really thought money would solve everything, smooth over any problem. My phone buzzed. A message from Priya Sharma. Looking forward to seeing you Monday for kickoff, Ava. My team's really excited. I just stared at the screen. They hadn't told Oracore yet. Of course they hadn't. The big signing ceremony, the champagne, the photos. That was all scheduled for tomorrow. Their plan was obvious. Fire me today, celebrate the deal tomorrow, and only then would they break the news to Priya that I'd been replaced. I could warn her right now. One text message, and their whole perfect little plan would come crashing down around them. My finger hovered over the keyboard. But then something stopped me. Some things, are just better witnessed firsthand. Some lessons need to be learned the hard way. I put my phone down and a small smile played on my lips. In exactly 18 hours, Summit Stone's perfect little world was going to crumble. And I wouldn't have to lift a single finger to make it happen. I could picture the scene perfectly. Summit Stone's largest conference room, all decorated for the occasion. Champagne chilling, executives in their finest suits, photographers ready to capture the historic moment. Priya would arrive precisely on time. She was always punctual, never early, never late. She'd be dressed in her signature minimalist style, no doubt. The door would open. Richard Sterling would step forward, hand extended, beaming. "Where's Ava?" Priya would ask immediately, her eyes scanning the room. Richard would falter just for a second. "Ava is no longer with the company, but I'd like to introduce you to Brooke Ramsey, who will be overseeing your account from now on." And then it would happen. Priya's face would harden. That look she gets when she's made up her mind. No Ava, no deal. The room would freeze. Confusion at first, then slowly dawning panic. "I made a promise to Ava," Priya would say, her voice calm but firm. "And she made one to me. If she's gone, so is this contract." And just like that, $60 million would vanish into thin air. 18 months of work, the biggest deal in company history, gone in an instant. I took another bite of my pasta and smiled to myself. Sometimes revenge doesn't require action. Sometimes all you need to do is wait. My Saturday morning yoga session was blissfully underway when my phone started buzzing. And buzzing. And buzzing. I ignored it until I finished my final savasana. When I finally picked it up, I had 12 missed calls and 23 text messages. All from Summit Stone numbers. One text, though, caught my eye. You dropped a bomb in the boardroom. Call me
Leo.
Leo Maxwell was Summit Stone's legal counsel. He'd always been decent to me, a straight shooter. I smiled, imagining the chaos. Contracts probably torn up, champagne definitely unpopped. Richard Sterling's perfect silver hair must have been all rumpled from him running his hands through it in panic. As I reached for some water, my phone lit up again. Richard Sterling. Oh, this was going to be interesting. I let it ring twice more just for good measure before answering. Ava. Richard's voice was strained, tight. There's been a misunderstanding. I stayed silent. Let him sweat. Priya Sharma is refusing to sign without you involved, he said, the words tumbling out. This is extremely unusual and problematic. I took a slow sip of water. That sounds like a Summit Stone problem, Richard. Not an Ava problem. We need to fix this, he said, and I could hear the desperation creeping into his voice. Can you come in? We can discuss your position. I actually laughed softly. My position? My position was eliminated, remember? Effective immediately. His silence on the other end of the line told me everything I needed to know. Name your price, Ava, Richard said, his voice now practically pleading. VP title. Whatever you want. I lounged deeper into my couch, thoroughly enjoying this unexpected Saturday entertainment. You know what's funny, Richard? Yesterday I wasn't good enough. My background wasn't prestigious enough. My state college degree wasn't going to impress the Oracle executives. Today suddenly I'm invaluable. That's not. It is exactly what happened, I interrupted, my voice firm but calm. Brooke made it very clear that my education wasn't up to snuff for your high-level clients. Funny how Priya Sharma never seemed to mind it, though. The silence on the other end was deafening. I could almost hear him squirming. We can make this right, he finally said, his voice low. Double your salary. Corner office. You'll report directly to me. I closed my eyes, just savoring the moment. 4 years, I'd worked twice as hard just to be taken half as seriously. And now, here they were begging. No, thank you, Richard, I said calmly. You didn't value me before. You only want me now because you're bleeding. Ava, please. Good luck with Oracle, Richard. I hear Priya can be quite stubborn when she feels someone's broken a promise. I hung up and then, for good measure, I blocked his number. Sunday morning my doorbell rang. I peered through the peephole, and who do I see standing in my hallway? Priya Sharma, holding a bottle of expensive tequila. You should have told me, she said the moment I opened the door, stepping inside without even waiting for an invitation. I just shrugged. Would it have changed anything, really? No, she admitted, setting the tequila down on my kitchen counter. But I could have prepared better. Richard Sterling looked like he was going to pass out right there in the conference room. We both laughed as I grabbed a couple of shot glasses. They offered to bring you back, didn't they? Priya said. It wasn't a question, more like a statement. I nodded, pouring the amber liquid. Triple my salary. VP title. The whole works. And, she prompted. And I told them no. She smiled a genuine wide smile and lifted her glass. Good, because I have a better idea. We clinked glasses and took our shots. The tequila burned in that pleasant way it does. I'm not signing with Summit Stone, Priya continued, her expression serious now. Not now, not ever. But I still need a new system, and you, my friend, still need a job. What are you suggesting? I asked, intrigued. Her eyes sparkled. I know someone you should meet. Another CEO. He's been trying to get my attention for years. Monday afternoon, I found myself at a rooftop restaurant downtown, meeting Caleb Hayes. He wasn't at all what I expected. No slick suit or rehearsed corporate smile. Just jeans, a simple button-up shirt, and the most intense, focused gaze I'd ever encountered. Priya speaks very highly of you, he said after we'd ordered. And trust me, that's rare. I studied him carefully. Your company, Stellara Innovations. You're going after Summit Stone's market, aren't you? He nodded. We're smaller, faster, more innovative. What Summit Stone is selling is already outdated, honestly. Then why hasn't Priya signed with you before now? I asked, curious. Caleb smiled, a quick, engaging grin. She never returned my calls. Until yesterday. The waiter brought our drinks. Sparkling water for him, iced tea for me.
No alcohol.
This was definitely business. So, I said, getting straight to the point. Why am I here, Caleb? Because you understand enterprise clients, he said, leaning forward slightly. You've built relationships that I couldn't even get a foot in the door with. And you just walked away from a $60 million deal on principle. I didn't walk away, I corrected him gently. I was fired. Details, he waved dismissively. The point is, Priya trusts you. And I need someone Priya trusts. I took a slow sip of my iced tea, considering. And what do I get out of this? Caleb leaned forward a bit more, his eyes bright. How does head of strategic accounts sound?
Plus equity.
Real equity, Ava, not the symbolic kind some companies offer. I looked him straight in the eye. I'm not interested in a title, Caleb, I told him, and I watched his expression shift from confident to curious. I can get a title anywhere. He nodded slowly. Okay, what are you interested in? Impact, I said simply. Freedom. The freedom to build something that actually matters. No more corporate politics, no more Harvard networking clubs determining who gets ahead. Caleb laughed, a genuine hearty laugh. Well, I dropped out of college, so you're safe on that front. Behind him, the city skyline stretched out, and I could see the Summit Stone building, that glass tower where I'd spent 5 years climbing a ladder that, it turned out, was rigged from the very start. Here's my offer, Caleb continued, his tone serious again. You bring your expertise, your relationships, your drive. I give you the platform and the resources. Together, we build something better than Summit Stone ever even imagined. And Priya? I asked. The Oracore deal? That's up to you, he said, a challenge in his eyes. You landed her once. Think you can do it again? I smiled. This wasn't about revenge anymore, not really. This was about building something authentic, something real. Something Richard Sterling and Brooke Ramsey, with their polished resumes and empty promises, could never truly understand. One condition, I said. Name it. I build my team my way. No pedigree requirements. I want people who deliver, regardless of where they went to school or what their last name is. Caleb extended his hand across the table. Welcome to Stellara Innovations, Ava. Priya Sharma arrived at Stellara Innovations' modest headquarters the following week. Their office couldn't have been more different from Summit Stone's gleaming glass tower. It was an open space with standing desks, and the walls were covered with scribbled ideas and diagrams instead of framed awards. Caleb, Priya, and I sat in a small functional conference room. No champagne this time. No photographers angling for the perfect shot. Just coffee and honest conversation. Your system is still unproven, Caleb, Priya said to him, never one to sugarcoat things. Summit Stone, for all their faults, has a track record. A track record of firing the people you trust, Caleb countered smoothly. I spread out my proposal on the table. It was similar in scope to what I designed at Summit Stone, but it was better. More flexible, more innovative. Built for genuine growth rather than just maintenance and upselling. I can offer you the same guarantees I made before, Priya, I said, looking directly at her. With one significant improvement. I'm not going anywhere this time. Priya studied the papers for a long moment, then looked up at me. Same price. 10% less, I replied. We don't have Summit Stone's overhead. She raised an eyebrow, clearly impressed. When can you start? We already have, Caleb said. pointing to some initial wireframes on his tablet. Priya extended her hand, first to Caleb, then to me. "Send over the contracts. We're in." And just like that, a $54 million deal was born. And Summit Stone's first domino had well and truly fallen. The news broke faster than I expected. Tech industry newsletters, blogs, they all picked up the story. Oracle pulls $60 million deal with Summit Stone. Signs with upstart Stellara Innovations instead. My LinkedIn profile absolutely exploded with connection requests. Old colleagues from Summit Stone started messaging me, full of questions and, in some cases, barely concealed admiration. Even my mother called after reading about it online somewhere. "Is it true, honey?" she asked, her voice a mix of excitement and concern. "Did you really walk away from Summit Stone and take their biggest client with you?" "I didn't walk away, Mom. They fired me," I corrected her gently. "But yeah, everything else is basically true." She paused for a moment. "Well, I'm proud of you, Ava. Standing up for yourself like that." Her words, simple as they were, hit me harder than I expected. All those years of pushing myself, of trying to prove I belonged, of battling that feeling that I wasn't quite good enough despite not having the right background, it wasn't just for me. It was for her too. For everyone who'd ever been told they weren't good enough because they didn't fit some arbitrary, outdated mold. That afternoon my phone rang. An unfamiliar number. I answered cautiously. "Is this Ava Martinez?" a woman's voice asked. "Speaking. This is Dr. Eleanor Vance, CEO of Vanguard Data. I understand you've recently joined Stellara Innovations." My heart did a little skip. Vanguard Data was a big name. Another huge potential client that had been on Summit Stone's prospect list for ages. "We're currently reviewing proposals for a major systems overhaul," she continued. "I'd like to add Stellara Innovations to our consideration list." The ripples were definitely becoming waves. Through industry contacts, the whispers and then the outright news about the chaos at Summit Stone started reaching me. Their stock had dropped 12% after the Oracle news went public. Investors were, understandably, asking some very uncomfortable questions. The board had apparently called an emergency meeting. Leo Maxwell, my friend from Summit Stone's legal team, sent me a text. Board meeting was brutal. Richard blamed Brooke. Brooke blamed legal. Everyone's looking for someone to throw under the bus. You know what? I didn't feel the kind of grim satisfaction I might have expected. These were people I worked with for years, some of them anyway. I didn't want them to suffer, not really. I just wanted them to learn. To understand that how you treat people matters. That evening, an email arrived from Brooke Ramsey. "Surprising, considering everything. I underestimated you, Ava," she wrote. "That was my mistake. And now I'm paying for it. They're looking for a scapegoat, and guess who's first in line?" I closed my laptop without replying. Brooke had chosen her path a long time ago, when she decided my background wasn't prestigious enough, when she schemed to take credit for my work. Now she was learning that those fancy degrees and connections don't shield you from the consequences of your own actions. Later that night, I got another text from Leo. "Summit Stone stock down 18% now. 3 more clients are asking questions, reevaluating their contracts. Board wants answers. Richard looks terrible." The empire wasn't just cracking. It was starting to crumble. My first official day at Stellara Innovations was so refreshingly different. No mahogany furniture or intimidating corner offices. Just an open, airy workspace buzzing with energy and ideas. Caleb introduced me to the team with his usual simple honesty. "This is Ava Martinez," he said. "She just cost Summit Stone $60 million by being too valuable for them to lose. So listen to her." Some faces in the room I recognized from industry events or from my time at Summit Stone. Others were completely new. But they all looked at me with this mix of curiosity and, I think, respect. I was given a desk near a window and a small smart team to start with. No fancy title plaque on the door. No executive assistant hovering. Just work that mattered and people who genuinely cared about doing it well. During lunch, I unpacked a small box of personal items I'd brought from home. Among them was my framed state college diploma, the very one Brooke Ramsey had mocked behind my back. I placed it prominently on my desk. Caleb walked by and noticed it. He smiled. Nice school. Not prestigious enough for some, apparently, I replied, with a small smile of my own. He just shrugged. My college dropout certificate is in my desk drawer somewhere. Results matter a hell of a lot more than paper, Ava. I looked around at my new workplace. No pretense, no elite gatekeeping. Just innovation, authenticity, and a shared sense of purpose. For the first time in years, I felt like I could actually breathe. Brooke Ramsey didn't go quietly, though. Oh no. She launched this desperate, almost frantic campaign to try and reclaim the Oracore deal. She was calling Priya multiple times a day, apparently, until Priya finally just had her number blocked. She offered to beat our price by 15%. Priya told me over lunch one day, shaking her head. When that didn't work, she started hinting that your implementation would fail without Summit Stone's resources and support. I nearly choked on my salad. What did you say to that? Priya smiled, that cool, collected smile of hers. I told her that Ava Martinez with a laptop is worth more than Summit Stone's entire development team. Hearing that, honestly, it meant more to me than any promotion or pay raise ever could have. Meanwhile, Caleb and I, along with our growing team at Stellara, were deep in preparation for our pitch to Dr. Vance at Vanguard Data. This was the second big domino, the one we hoped would really solidify our position in the market. Our proposal wasn't just competitive, it was revolutionary. We were combining elements and offering solutions that Summit Stone hadn't even considered. That evening, Dr. Vance's assistant called to confirm our presentation slot for the following week. And get this, Summit Stone was scheduled to pitch on the very same day. The playing field was definitely leveling out. Before leaving the office, I got a LinkedIn notification. Richard Sterling had viewed my profile. Twice. He could see I'd updated my position to head of strategic partnerships at Stellara Innovations. He could also see the growing list of congratulations and endorsements from well-respected industry contacts. I wondered if he regretted his decision yet. I wondered if Brooke did. Noah Evans, who had been Summit Stone's senior systems architect, was waiting for me outside our office the next morning. He looked a bit nervous, kind of glancing over his shoulder as if he expected Summit Stone spies to suddenly appear. "Got a minute, Ava?" he asked. I invited him in for coffee. Noah had always been brilliant, truly the backbone of so many successful projects I'd worked on at Summit Stone. He was also perpetually overlooked for promotion because, according to the old guard, he lacked the executive presence they so highly valued, which basically meant he was quiet and focused on work, not schmoozing. "They're imploding over there," he said once we sat down, his voice low. 3 more major clients are officially reviewing their contracts. Richard is micromanaging everything. Brooke's blaming everyone but herself. It's a mess. I just nodded, waiting. I had a feeling this wasn't just a courtesy call. "I heard what they did to you," he continued, looking me in the eye. "The real reason, not the restructuring lie they told everyone else." I stayed silent, letting him talk. "I spent 6 years building their core systems, Ava," Noah said, his voice steady but filled with a quiet frustration I recognized all too well. 6 years being told I'm too quiet for leadership roles, that I don't project authority. I'm ready for something new. Something real. The request was clear, even though he hadn't explicitly said it. I studied him carefully for a moment. "We value results here, Noah," I said finally. "Not how loud you talk in meetings or what fancy school you attended. We value what you can build, what you can contribute." A wave of relief washed over his face. It was almost palpable. "When can I start? How's Monday sound?" The exodus was beginning. Vanguard Data signed with us 2 weeks later. Another major client loss for Summit Stone. Another huge win for Stellara Innovations. Our team celebrated with pizza and beer in the conference room. No fancy restaurants or expensive champagne. Just genuine satisfaction for work well done. For building something meaningful together. My phone lit up with a text from Leo. Richard just received a report identifying 5 more at-risk clients. All of them are asking about you specifically, Ava. The board is in full panic mode. I showed the message to Caleb, who grinned. The best revenge is massive success, my friend. This isn't about revenge anymore, Caleb. I corrected him gently, though I knew what he meant. It's about building something better. Something lasting. That night, I received an unexpected email from a junior analyst at Summit Stone. Someone I'd mentored briefly. They're monitoring your LinkedIn activity, she wrote. Making lists of who's connecting with you. Creating risk assessments based on which of their clients engage with your posts. You're living rent-free in their heads. The thought, I had to admit, wasn't entirely unpleasant. Later, another notification popped up on my phone. Brooke Ramsey had removed me from her LinkedIn connections. I actually smiled. She still didn't get it. This wasn't about networking or who knew whom. This was about value. Real, tangible value, not the kind you just claim on a resume or project in a boardroom. Summit Stone was scared. And honestly, they should be. Monday morning brought news that Summit Stone's legal team was preparing to send us a cease and desist letter. They were claiming I had violated non-compete clauses from my old contract. Leo, bless him, sent me a heads-up text. They're desperate, Ava. Looking for anything to slow you down. I forwarded the warning to Caleb, who immediately connected me with Stellara's attorneys. Within hours, they confirmed what I already suspected. My Summit Stone contract had no enforceable non-compete clause that would apply here. They had absolutely nothing. But Brooke, or what was left of her influence at Summit Stone, wasn't done trying. Through various industry channels, I started hearing rumors that Priya Sharma was considering a breach of contract suit against us, against Stellara. It was such a desperate, pathetic lie. I called Priya immediately. Are you hearing these ridiculous rumors about me suing you? She asked, and then she just laughed. Yes, apparently I'm very angry about being tricked into breaking my Summit Stone contract. Except there was no contract, I pointed out. You never actually signed it. Exactly, she said. Don't worry, Ava. I've already had my PR team issue a statement clarifying that Oracle has an excellent and fully consensual partnership with Stellara Innovations. Brooke and Summit Stone are going to look even worse when that hits the news tomorrow. I thanked her and hung up, feeling this strange mix of emotions. This wasn't the clean professional break I might have once imagined. This was turning into a war. A war that Summit Stone had started, but one they couldn't possibly win. Not against us. Not anymore. That evening, Priya invited me over to her apartment for dinner. It was a sparse, modern space, very her, with those incredible floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire city. We sat out on her balcony with takeout containers of really good Thai food and a bottle of wine, just watching the sunset paint the sky. Remember senior year of college? She asked, refilling my glass. That terrible little apartment we shared off campus? I laughed. The one with the leaky ceiling in the bathroom and those awful neighbors who fought all night, every night? How could I possibly forget? We ate instant ramen for a month straight just to afford textbooks that semester, she said, smiling at the memory. And we made that pact, remember? The pact. Wow, I hadn't thought about that in years. 2 broke college girls, sitting cross-legged on a stained second-hand carpet, making these grand promises about the future. When one of us makes it, I recited from memory, we pull the other one up. Priya nodded, her eyes soft. I always thought I'd be the one pulling you up, Ava. Turns out we're pulling each other. We clinked our wine glasses. Behind her, the Summit Stone building stood tall among the skyscrapers, its windows glowing in the dusk. Once upon a time, I dreamed of having an office near the top of a building like that. Now I realize just how much bigger and more interesting the world was outside those glass walls. To promises kept, Priya said, raising her glass again. To promises kept, I echoed. Some bonds, I realized, truly do transcend contracts. Some loyalty can't be bought with Harvard degrees or corner offices. Caleb called me into his office early Tuesday, grinning like a kid on Christmas morning as he spun his monitor around to face me. Headlines blazed across the screen. Startup Stellara Innovations steals second major client from industry giant Summit Stone Corporation. How a fired manager built a rival empire in under 30 days. Summit Stone stock plummets as client exodus continues. TechCrunch, Forbes, Business Insider, they were all running with the story. The David versus Goliath narrative, the underdog triumphing. It was too juicy for them to ignore. We're trending, Ava, Caleb said, practically bouncing in his chair, unable to contain his excitement. Venture capital firms are calling. Everyone wants a piece of what we're building here. My phone buzzed continuously with notifications. Old colleagues, industry peers I hadn't spoken to in years, even reporters requesting interviews. So what do you want to do? Caleb asked, his expression sobering a bit. This is your moment to. Your story. I considered the question carefully. Part of me, the part that still felt the sting of that cold dismissal, wanted to tell the world exactly how Summit Stone had dismissed me for not having the right pedigree, how their deeply ingrained classism and elitism had cost them millions and was now threatening their very existence. But a bigger part of me, the part that was focused on the future, recognized that our success, Stellara's success, was speaking far louder than any interview I could ever give. Let's just focus on building, Caleb, I said finally. The results will tell our story better than words ever could. Caleb nodded approvingly, a look of deep respect in his eyes. That's why you're here, Ava. Later that day, we quietly closed a third major deal. No big press release was necessary this time. The news hit the industry like a tidal wave anyway. And then the inevitable. Brooke Ramsey, VP of Strategic Accounts at Summit Stone Corp., was stepping down to pursue other opportunities. The corporate euphemism fooled absolutely no one. She had been fired, or at the very least forced to resign, which amounted to the same thing. Leo texted me the details. Board cited catastrophic mismanagement of key client relationships. She's gone. Richard has been demoted to president. No longer CEO. They're bringing in outside crisis management. I felt this complicated mix of emotions. Satisfaction certainly, but also a strange kind of sadness. Brooke had chosen the wrong path, valuing pedigree over performance, status over actual substance. And now she was paying the price. That afternoon, my LinkedIn notifications showed that 5 more Summit Stone employees had updated their profiles to open to work. The exodus was accelerating. An email arrived from Richard Sterling, sent to my personal address since I'd blocked him everywhere else. I was wrong, Ava, it read. Simply that. I'm sorry. Too little, too late, perhaps. But I appreciated the raw humanity behind it, however brief. In another life, in a company that valued the right things, perhaps we could have built something amazing together. I closed the email without replying. Some bridges, once burned so thoroughly, simply can't be rebuilt. 1 month after Priya Sharma and Oracore Systems signed with us, our little team at Stellara Innovations had grown from 7 people to 23. Many of them were former Summit Stone employees, talented, dedicated people who had been overlooked or undervalued for all the wrong reasons. I started calling them my Phoenix team, risen from the ashes of their former careers, stronger and more determined than ever. Noah Evans, our quiet genius, had completely transformed our technical architecture, finally allowed to implement ideas that Summit Stone had deemed too innovative or too risky. Mira, a brilliant analyst who'd been stuck in an entry-level role at Summit Stone because she was considered too direct in meetings. Now led our entire data strategy with incredible results. Jason, who'd been repeatedly passed over for promotions at Summit Stone despite stellar performance reviews because he supposedly lacked polish, was now heading up our client success team and getting rave reviews from our new partners. We weren't just building software, we were building a culture. A culture that valued results over resumes, impact over image. Caleb, true to his word, gave me full autonomy to shape this team my way. No HR filters requiring specific schools or a minimum number of years of experience in a certain role. Just raw talent, genuine passion, and a shared desire to do great work. During our weekly all-hands meeting, I looked around at these faces. Some I'd known for years, others were brand new to me. But all of them were united by a shared vision of what work could be, what it should be, when freed from arbitrary gatekeeping and toxic politics. This is just the beginning, I told them, and I meant every single word. Summit Stone's new CEO, Isabel Ross, was known throughout the industry as a turnaround specialist, a corporate fixer. Her first major move was predictable: a buyout offer for Stellara Innovations. The email came directly to Caleb and me. We see tremendous potential in combining our organizations. Name your price. Caleb called me into his office to discuss it. He was leaning back in his chair, feet propped up on his desk, a thoughtful expression on his face. "They're desperate, Ava," he said. "This is a last-ditch effort to stop the bleeding, to buy back some credibility." I nodded. Their board must be in full panic mode. They see us not just as a competitor, but as the embodiment of everything they got wrong. "So," Caleb leaned forward, his eyes meeting mine, "what do we tell them?" I thought about Summit Stone's gleaming glass tower, the executive offices with their heavy mahogany furniture, the prestigious address, all the outward trappings of success, but with so little substance underneath. Then I looked around at our modest, vibrant space at Stellara, filled with energy, collaboration, and authentic innovation. "Tell them we're not for sale, Caleb," I said finally, a firm sense of conviction settling over me. "Not at any price." Caleb grinned, a wide, satisfied grin, and drafted a response right there on the spot. It was short and to the point. "Thank you for your interest in Stellara Innovations. We must respectfully decline your offer. You couldn't afford us then. You still can't now." Perhaps it was a little petty. Perhaps it was a tad unprofessional. But watching him hit send on that email felt like closing a chapter that desperately needed ending. Some things just aren't for sale. Some principles can't be compromised. Not even for all the money in the world. 6 months flew by in a whirlwind of growth and success. Stellara Innovations expanded to new, larger offices, still open and collaborative, but with more room for our rapidly growing team. Our client list grew from 3 to 17. Our team more than doubled again. Then came the email I truly never expected. An invitation to be the keynote speaker at the annual Tech Innovation Summit. It's a huge honor, usually reserved for industry veterans or the founders of billion-dollar unicorn startups. They want me to talk about disruption and resilience, I told Caleb, still staring at the invitation on my screen in disbelief. "Well," he replied with that characteristic grin, "you are pretty much the poster child for both, Ava. You should definitely do it." The summit was the industry's premier event. Everyone who was anyone in tech would be there, including, I was sure, Summit Stone's new leadership team. I spent weeks crafting my speech, determined to focus on the future, on the lessons learned, rather than dwelling on the bitterness of the past. This wasn't about Summit Stone anymore. This was about changing how the entire industry thought about talent, about value, about what truly drives success. The day arrived. Standing at the podium, looking out at hundreds of industry leaders, I felt strangely calm. I wasn't underestimated, I told the hushed audience. I was misjudged. And there's a profound difference. Underestimation is about perceived capability. Misjudgment is about flawed perception. And perception all too often is where companies and leaders fail. Later that evening at the awards dinner, I was named Executive of the Year. Summit Stone's table, I couldn't help but notice, remained conspicuously empty. 1 year to the day after I was so coldly fired, I stood in my new office at Stellara. It was a simple space, with glass walls that encouraged openness and a view of the city that felt earned, not entitled. No mahogany, no pretense, just functionality and light. On my desk sat a small, framed note from Priya Sharma. It just said, "I keep my promises to P." Next to it was my state college diploma, proudly displayed, a quiet testament to the fact that talent and drive aren't confined to Ivy League halls. And beside that, a spreadsheet showing our latest quarterly results growth that had surpassed even our most optimistic projections. Caleb knocked on my open door, a coffee cup in his hand. "Board meeting in 10. The investors are practically giddy, by the way." I nodded, gathering my materials. "Did you see the latest news about Summit Stone?" he asked, his voice casual but with an undercurrent of something else. "Acquisition rumors are flying. They're struggling to stop the client exodus. Stocks down 60% since this time last year." I felt no joy at their downfall, not anymore. Only a quiet, profound satisfaction that the market, in its own way, had recognized true value over empty prestige. As we walked to the conference room, my team was already gathering diverse faces from all backgrounds, all walks of life, united by their talent and their belief in what we were building, rather than by their pedigree. Noah gave me a thumbs up as he arranged his presentation materials. "Ready to change the world, Ava?" Caleb asked, a familiar spark in his eyes. I smiled. "Caleb," I said, "we already have. Some revenge doesn't need to be loud or dramatic. Sometimes the most powerful kind just needs to be final." Looking back, it wasn't about revenge, not really. It was about finding out what I was truly made of, and more importantly, what real value looks like. It's about building something based on respect and actual talent, not just where you went to school or who you know. It's a quiet strength, you know? The kind that doesn't need to shout to be heard. My story isn't unique. I know a lot of us have faced something similar. A moment where you're counted out or misjudged. I'd love to hear your thoughts and maybe your own experiences in the comments below. And if these stories resonate with you, if they touch something in you, please consider subscribing to the channel. We've got many more to share. If you feel moved to support our storytelling journey here at TK Revenge Story, you can use the Super Thanks feature. Giving back in its own way is often a powerful part of healing and moving forward too.